Hi, and welcome to the Moto Asha podcast. On this podcast, we talk about grease, the right type of grease, the types of grease, and how do you use them effectively and use it for the right application. Hi, and welcome back to the Moto Asha podcast. We've got Yogesh once again. We thought we'd do a simple podcast on Greece. I think it's a very interesting topic because there's a lot to it, but just not as simple as just applying grease on a motorcycle and uh, that's it. So we thought we'd get some expert to talk about it, and we've got Yogesh once again. So hi, Yogesh.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. So tell us more about greases and what is the importance of grease? Why does somebody need to have grease on a motorcycle, and what are the different types of greases?
uh, Very short but very long topic.
Yep.
Okay, so as usual, you have just dropped in. So okay, so grease. See, grease is a thicker form of a very good quality synthetic oil. Grease are means where you want the lubricant to stay for a very longer time. You put grease. You want the part to be lubricated, which is not accessible very well, and the parts where you cannot put oil because of there are no seals, or what you say, the parts where they are under extreme pressure, or which is not accessible very means usually we don't access those areas very often. There you apply grease. So that's why the grease is, like its name suggests, grease. Grease means it's jelly type, thicker.
Yeah.
So like there are grades in engine oils, like say 5W, then 10W, then the W stands for wattage. Wattage is not anything which is related to electricals. So what means it's a, I'll not go in that deep, but 5 watt is a very thin oil. 10W will be little bit thicker, 5 times thicker than 5W. So like that it goes on 15, 20, then you get 30, then you get 40, then you get 50, then you get 60. So people know today, many means, like say you can say like 80-90% of people know oil still 60. But there are, uh, I'm saying common people, but there are oils which go beyond that. Oils which go beyond, start crossing 100, they get thick. So like if you take a 140 grade gear oil, engine oil doesn't come in a 140 grade. Anything which crosses a 60 grade, 60 watt, does not come in engine oil.
Yeah.
They all go in heavy duty applications. So where the area of lubrication is very small and the load is very high, like those parts, they require a thicker grade oils. Temperature is high.
Grease.
So see, 140 grade, if you take, see, for example, there is a 90 number oil, which is a gear oil. You will never get an engine oil which is 90 number. So why I said 90 number, it doesn't say that it's a 90W oil, but it's called as a 90 number. Generally, people will understand if I say 90 number.
Yeah.
If I put it in another form, a synthetic labeling form, nobody will understand what I'm talking. So like that, from 90 it goes to 120, then it goes to 140, then above 140 also is there. But till 140 you can say it's a oil. Everything which crosses 140 is not oil, it goes into grease category. So grease which have, now I will not go in viscosity gradient and all that. So I'll just keep it very simple for people to understand. Anything which crosses 140 is grease,
Okay.
in simple terms, in layman terms. But in technical terms, if I start speaking technically, then it may not be correct what I am saying, but this is just for people to understand. So now, as the topic is just on grease, just keep up. Let's start talking on grease. Grease, there are, I'll say how many types? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Almost 10, 15 types of grease are there. Most used is NLGI type. So NLGI is not, has nothing to do with the type of chemical in that. And it's a national lubricating. I don't recall exactly, but it's some national lubricating company standard. It's a standard. How is API, American Petroleum?
Yeah.
Like that, NLGI is also standard. NLGI stands for that. But now, why it is put in NLGI? Because it's the standard. See, there are NLGI now. We have 2 and 3 also. But very lately, there was only NLGI. There is NLGI, the company NLGI or the standard NLGI is specifically mentioned on the that grease tin or the box or whatever. It is mentioned because NLGI certifies that grease to that what use it is made. So if you take a normal NLGI grease, it will be like normal NLGI, which does not have 1, 2 or 3 written. It just written NLGI. So NLGI grease application, in emergency terms, you can put it anywhere you want. Wherever grease is required, you can put an NLGI grease. Basically, all grease have a lithium base. Some grease which are not standard wise manufactured, they don't use lithium. They use some other types of chemicals. Let's forget that. So lithium is used as a base for grease, and then it is synthetically mastered to produce higher grades. So NLGI grease in emergency times, when you really stuck somewhere and you need, and you have opened your bike to such an extent that you need to put a grease, but you don't have anything, but you just have something which is stating, that box is stating NLGI grease, or I will add one more EP grease. So you can put that grease and forget. Whenever your bike goes for service to a known person, then you can tell him what has gone and he can put the correct grease which is required by the motorcycle. Now, NLGI grease nomenclature 1 is little bit thicker than NLGI. NLGI 2 is more thick. Thick in the sense NLGI 1 is more slippery than NLGI 2. But NLGI 2 is more, what do you call, it can withstand more load, more temperature, and it can sustain more in even in water conditions. For people who go for this enduros and all that, they put their bikes in water crossing and all that. Even in that situation also, that grease stays there. It doesn't leave the place, or it does not leave the lubrication. Even if water goes inside, grease will be there. NLGI 2. NLGI 1, if NLGI stays for say 1000 kilometers, NLGI 1 will disappear in 800 kilometers. NLGI only will disappear in 200, 300 kilometers. So that is the difference between. This is just I'm talking. Yeah. Basic difference. So like that. So this is a NLGI grease. Another, there is a grease which is there are a grease which has written EP. EP is for extreme pressure. Extreme pressure grease are used in areas like the name suggests, extreme pressure. So wherever they generally extreme pressure grease are not used in motorcycles. They are used in heavy industries like trucks or like that. Heavy duty machineries you use EP grease. Now EP also has 1, 2, 3. 1 has disappeared, EP has disappeared. Now 2 and 3 is going to come now. 2 is used today. EP2 you'll see like that. So extreme pressure grease has, how I told about the NLGI 1-2, the extreme pressure also works the same way. So these are two basic greases which are available anywhere in the world. Wherever, whichever shop you go, any shop you go, you will get this grease. EP, NLGI 1-2 or extreme pressure. These grease are directly available off the shelf to everyone. Now the thing comes for, you can ask me anything. Just in between, if you
I want to know where is it used and what are the different greases and where do you use them in a perfect scenario? Because
yeah,
my example is exactly the same thing. I use NLG like a madman all across my bike. So, what is the right grease for the right job on a motorcycle?
I'll just put it simple way. Grease are, as I told earlier, greases are used on the parts which are not accessible or not opened frequently. For example, you take steering bearings. You don't, every time, every weekend, you don't open a steering bearing. You once, sometimes people will open when the problem arises, or a maintenance freak guy will open it to service it after every 2, 3 months, or say 6 months or 1 year. But that is not going to be opened every time. So those places like these steering bearings, you use grease. Then you are wheel bearings, you use grease. Swing arm pivots, you use grease. Shocker joints, rear shocker, not the front shocker. Rear shocker joints, linkages, there grease has to be used. Now, as I told, you can put whatever grease is available to you. The life depends on what quality of grease you use. Life of both the how the grease works and how the parts last. That's why if you use, now there are specialized grease. Specialized grease means grease which are specifically made to be used on the specified part only. So for example, now there are lithium based grease. Now many people must be knowing that I'll jump in. I'll just shuffle. Now chain spray. Now many kinds of chain loops are available in the market. For example, Putoline sells a chain loop which is white in color. Some even Putoline or some other companies make chain loop which is mentioned as dry loop. Now people will have a question: what is a dry loop? Then if it is a dry, then how it's a loop? It's in a powder form. It is synthetically engineered. Once you spray it, why it is made dry loop? Because people always complain that this thing spills, sprays on the rims and on the parts. So people use dry loop. See, everybody's thinking and thought process is not same. Everybody's suggestions are not same. All the suggestions are based on what knowledge he has. Then the knowledge what he has is either earned from somewhere or is earned practically. Now practical knowledge always works. Suggestion knowledge, unless you check it and you work on it and you find it, you cannot tell. What I am speaking is 95% practical, 5% from theory. So what I suggest for chain is 90 number gear oil. I myself use 90 number gear oil, and I personally use on my bikes and I use on my clients' bikes also. I don't use any chain loop. That doesn't mean you don't go buy a 90 loop, which is not suggested. Why it is not suggested? It's suggested that you keep it in your house garage, or a garage guy or a workshop guy uses a 90 number oil. You are going on a tour, you cannot go in search of a 90 number gear oil bottle and you want go in search of a what you call the oil can, which is tight seal. You whenever you want, you remove it from your bag and put.
It's the convenience.
There is no convenience. That's why this canned loop system came. So what is a chain loop? Normal chain loop, you go and buy any normal chain loop. It's a 90 number gear oil mixed with a high pressure gas and synthetically mastered to keep it liquid in the can. When it comes out, you will see, you spray the what do you call the loop.
It sticks to it.
It after some time, like after 10 minutes, it becomes sticky because it's grease. It's a EP grease. It's mixed with silicone grease. That stickiness is because of silicone grease. So now that silicone sticks to the metal. Silicone's property is to stick. So that's why silicone is also used as one of the component in manufacturing grease. All greases use silicone because they want to stick. So there are like 6 other chemicals which are also used there. But this is what it is. It is basically a 90 number oil in a chain loop.
Remastered.
Lithium sprays which are white in colors, they use lithium white. Lithium is a white. It's a soap. Basically, lithium in oil engineering and oil this thing, nobody will speak lithium as a grease. They will talk as lithium soap. So that soap has many other characteristics. So type 1, 2, 3, DIN 1, 7, 8, like that. So all the manufacturers will speak in those terms, DIN terms. What type of DIN soap you have to use, like that. That goes on. But basically, that's a soap. Lithium white, lithium grease. So that is what is in that white. White lithium grease, dried, pressurized, synthetically mastered, that when it comes in contact with air, it will turn into loop. That is what is dry loop. Which will not, when you spray, it will not, spray any other. So that is what is dry grease. Even
so where do you use what kind of grease? So NLG2 we can use on bearings.
Yeah.
What other parts require different grease?
So see, for there are companies which are selling grease which is called as assembly grease.
Yeah.
Assembly grease is basically NLGI grease, but it has a nomenclature where you want to use it. Is it on a heavy machinery part or light machinery part? If you want to use it on light machinery part, go for NLGI or NLGI 1 grease. Heavy machinery assembly, I'm saying assembly, you use NLGI 2. Means
thicker grease.
Thicker. So assembly grease has, when you say assembly grease, for example, Moto Husher manufactures its own assembly grease. So for example, Moto Husher has assembly grease grade 1, which is used for lighter. This is an example. So Moto Husher assembly grease grade 2 used for heavy machineries.
Okay.
For assembling heavy machineries. So where you use assembly, what assemblies you are doing? Like when you are assembling the swing arms, the swing arm pivot bearings, which goes through the chassis and one axle runs through. So that is the heaviest part of that part, that those bearings, swing arm bearings, take the maximum load. So those bearings need NLGI 2 grease.
But assembly grease.
Assembly grease.
Okay. What is the difference between a normal NLGI and an assembly grease?
Assembly grease is NLGI 2.
Okay, got it.
Assembly grease 1. If now they are selling, but previously it was just a grease. So now they are selling as different parts to get convenient. So for shocker linkages or your this axle, use NLGI 1, which is assembly grease 1.
Yeah. Do you require engine assemblies also assembly grease, like when you put the new parts inside, like if you're putting a new crank inside?
No.
Yeah.
No.
You don't require.
Today you don't use assembly grease in engines.
Okay.
Very old times we need grease because those bearings used to run dry for quite a long time. There is a different theory. We'll talk now only. Now you don't need a assembly grease to assemble an engine.
Okay.
You need assembly grease to assemble chassis parts.
Okay.
Now steering bearings, if you are assembling steering bearings, use assembly grease. To assembly grease is basically whatever companies they are selling today, they are basically NLGI2 grease. You have to specially ask for NLGI1 grease, assembly grease. Generally, you'll get, if you ask for assembly grease, for example, Motowasher is selling assembly grease. If you buy that, that is used for that only. Steering bearings, swing arm pivots, swing arm joints.
So the first time when you install something in assembly, you use an assembly grease.
Assembly grease.
If I'm repacking grease, then I can just normally use an NLGI2 grease. Okay, got it.
Then there is now formulations have gone so ahead, they have come up with copper paste grease. Then there is copper grease. Then copper grease and copper paste grease have chemicals, 3 chemicals difference are there. Copper grease is used for electrical contacts, where electrical contacts are not proper, and heavy duty electrical contacts use copper grease. It's only written copper grease, CU.
That's it.
They have written CU. You don't take copper grease and use it in place of copper paste grease. Okay. Copper paste grease is named because copper paste as copper paste because it is used where you don't require the things to seize.
Anti-seize.
For example, this spark plugs. Yeah. Then your steering ka jo steering main nut, which you don't open always. Like you put that copper paste grease on that nut. It is basically anti-seize grease.
These are high temperature greases.
Very
right?
No, not very high temperature, but it can withstand temperature.
Got it. So like the O2 sensor gets seized, you put some copper grease around it and put it inside.
You can use copper grease there. But extreme high temperature, for example, exhaust runs on very high degrees. So, see, if I start telling this, people will go in R&D of this.
Yeah. Okay.
So see, there is, I have started this topic, I'll tell you. Graphite is used. Copper, copper paste graphite grease, it's used. But it's very rarely available, you don't get it. But that is what is companies are using on O2 sensors. See, if any mechanics are listening to this, when they open a brand new exhaust system, to put a full exhaust system, then they open that O2 sensor, they will see a black paste there on the O2 sensor. Yeah. That is copper disulfide graphite.
Okay.
That's a very high temperature. Graphite is a very high temperature grease. And graphite has connectivity. Okay. Graphite
so electric connection is there.
Connection is there. It is conductive. Even copper is conductive. Graphite is also conductive. So but graphite withstand more heat. So they use that. Every O2 sensor use a graphite. Okay. Copper graphite mix. Okay. Grease. Then engine assembly, as you said. Engine assembly requires molybdenum. Molybdenum, the grease are said as moly grease, then molybdenum grease, then molybdenum disulfide grease. So like that, there are 4 or 5 types in that. So we'll just speak about molybdenum. Molybdenum is used as a assembly grease for engines. Okay. But that molybdenum grease is very thin. It's very, very thin.
So it mixes with the oil once it starts moving in.
It mixes with the oil. So it's like 180 grade oil. Okay. How is 90 number thick oil? Then 140 is more thicker. This is 180 grade molybdenum. But molybdenum is always black in color. 99% all moly greases will come in black in color. If some companies like in BMW plant, they use molybdenum grease, but that is golden in color. That is specifically told through the company to make it that way. But it's a moly grease. molybdenum has friction. What do you call? Uh, it resists friction. Means if you put means see two rollers you put together and you start rotating those rollers, there will be friction in them. So if you put a very good quality engine oil and you put pressure, so pressure is measured in foot pounds of torque and all that will speak in nm. So nm, for example, those two rollers are mating and there is a friction and you put a load of say around 50 nm and those rollers stop.
Yeah.
If you put molybdenum, you go to 200 nm. Those
But
rollers
still,
still
stay.
that is what is molybdenum. It
Alright.
has very less friction coefficient. So there you use molybdenum crankshaft.
Yeah.
Crankshaft
So the
leaf
first
bearings.
assembly.
First assembly. Crankshaft leaf bearings are there. So you put molybdenum grease. Cylinder bore.
Yeah.
Cylinder bore piston skirt. You apply molybdenum. Then so that is what is molybdenum.
Got it.
Then for higher temperature application or even for application where temperature is high but the bolts get seized, the nut gets seized, you use silicone.
Okay.
Companies manufacture silicone grease. So that silicone grease is basically used in food industries. Maximum usage is in food industries.
Okay. Oh.
So there are food grade grease. So that food grade grease is silicone. But
Okay.
that is to be used. Yeah. On motorcycles, silicone grease can be used on electronic components, electronic motors. So you get electric grease.
Dielectric.
Not dielectric.
The electric.
Electric grease. Dielectric grease is for connections.
Okay.
Your
So on a battery terminal you'd use.
battery terminal, alternators, rectifier connection, all the couplers. So Triumph, you own a Triumph.
Yeah.
Triumph, you open any relays or any couplers, you will see a grease inside.
Yes.
So that is a dielectric grease.
So it conducts electricity.
Water, moisture, everything stays out. You open it after 20 years also, the couplers will be intact. There will be no rust, no corrosion, nothing. So they're very used. That is silicone greases, you get electrical grease. Where you have to use, where you get electrical gears. Like say for example, somebody opens up a servo motor. You know, mechanics will understand what I'm saying. Those gears which run use electric grease.
Okay.
So that is where silicone greases come. Then there is another type of grease is there which is called Teflon, which is named as PTFE. So now people are mixing PTFE, Teflon, with chain lube, with engine oil, not engine oil, sorry, assembly oil.
Assembly oil. Normal grease also has been added to PTFE. Right?
PTFE. Yeah. Then there are additives stating PTFE, but additives which state PTFE, engine oil additive with PTFE, Teflon, has means you should never put that in a wet clutch system. Then you forget your clutch plates.
Is going to just keep slipping.
Yeah.
Okay.
Never use Teflon because these are all anti-friction grease. They don't let friction to create, and clutch will not work unless and until there is a friction.
Got it.
So that is how these are there. So Teflon grease where you should use. Dry clutch system. Bikes which have dry clutch, you can put that PTFE oil additive directly in the engine with a dry clutch. So, and any other parts which you want to lubricate with PTFE, you can use those PTFE grease. Resist friction. Now, assembly grease which does not have a PTFE and assembly grease which has a PTFE. If you use that PTFE, you will people will find the difference. There is frictional difference is it's really visible and felt. Very less friction is there. Chain loop with PTFE. Instantly you will find that the noise which was coming is less and the vibrations which were there, the chain rolling vibrations, which has gone down because of PTFE.
So PTFE is a layer.
It's a layer, Teflon.
It's a Teflon
coating.
layer. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Then there are grease now available with ceramic. Now, ceramic is a non-conductive material, very high temperature. Now, ceramics are used like a spark plug, top of that white color thing is a ceramic. The insulator, spark plug, that white color where names are written is a ceramic. It's a electrical insulator. It's a non-conductive. Means it's a non-conductive material, but it has what do you call friction gradient is also very less. Means it can resist friction.
Okay.
So now Greece have come up with ceramic also, but now where to use that? So companies like I don't know which company makes it, but it is available. Those grease are to be used in extremely I will put it in this way, that the parts which are to be opened only once, you will never touch those parts again in the lifetime of the motorcycle, unless and until some mishap happens. Those parts are not going to come out.
Okay.
For example, I'll put a what motorcycle, Ducati V4 you say. If you want to there are few parts in a Ducati where you want to access, you have to get the engine also. You have to remove the engine also, because it has no chassis. Engine is the chassis. So like that, those parts, like those areas, use this ceramic grease.
Okay, got it.
It's a high temperature grease, but it's a very costly affair. So companies won't put ceramic grease. They will use either assembly grease, or they will use grease which are specifically designed by the company. So like that. So these are all the grease types, basic grease types, which people will understand.
Yeah.
There are other complex grease types also. So let's not talk about it.
Cool. I think we've spent more than half an hour just talking about grease, which is
It goes.
it's a science in itself. But no, thanks so much for your help. I think that was very technical. A lot of people don't understand grease. Like I said, we just pick up any grease from the shop and we use it. So it's good to know where to use what, and probably helps us with our next choice of grease.
Yeah.
So thanks again, Yogesh.
Thank you.
We love to hear from you always. So thanks again.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to this podcast. I want to hear your stories, your motorcycle experiences, what you've been doing, and how motorcycles have made your life better. So if you have something to say, DM us on Instagram, and I'll be more than happy to get you on this podcast.